Through the sandstorm, burying dunes, abandoned cars, and items, a man in a spacesuit makes his way. This is Finch, the main character and engineer. Spotting the facade of a supermarket through the streams of sand, he moves forward, ignoring the assistant's weather updates and humming to himself. Alongside him, Dewey, a four-wheeled robot with an additional manipulator arm and a shopping basket on its back, examines the empty shelves. The man scans the dried bodies of long-dead people on the floor, using a green laser marking a target for Dewey resembling a small dog. The mechanism picks up cans of food while Finch searches for other supplies, particularly dog food. After the inspection, Finch marks the facade with spray paint to avoid rechecking. He climbs into his makeshift truck and checks the map. Markers indicate places they have already cleared. Having set a new goal, Finch drives through the post-apocalyptic city buried in sand. Suddenly, the voice assistant reports a drop in atmospheric pressure, the first sign of an approaching powerful storm. A massive sand wall looms ahead, swiftly moving toward him. He urgently retreats to a secure underground base. With the acquired supplies, Dewey drags Finch into the shelter amidst powerful gusts of wind threatening to carry away anything unsecured. After a meticulous procedure to remove tiny dust particles from his spacesuit, Finch takes a shower. During the process, a fit of coughing seizes him. The excursions into the deserted city take a toll. Finch descends into the underground dwelling, where he is greeted by a dog named Goodyear. After feeding the furry companion, Finch eats himself and unpacks the acquired supplies before proceeding to his main project. The man selects a bunch of books from the library, and a mechanical device resembling a mix of a Goldberg machine and a Terminator factory carefully removes their spines to scan each page. Meanwhile, the engineer soldering boards for the new robot occasionally plays with the dog before bedtime. While lying in bed, Finch reads a book titled Consequences of Radiation Exposure. His sad expression suggests that what he reads does not inspire optimism. Apparently, having been exposed to such radiation himself, he won't last long. What will happen to Goodyear, dreaming at the man's feet, tormented by unpleasant thoughts caused by them? Unable to sleep, the engineer continues working. Books about gamma radiation, the impact of ultraviolet light, and solar flares are scattered in the room. Along with the last book titled Surviving the End of the World in May 2028, they unveil the mystery behind the prehistory of the apocalypse. Specifically, powerful solar flares rendered the planet's surface uninhabitable. Finch works on the head of the new robot. To do this, he needs eyes and has to remove Dewey's goggles, temporarily blinding him. After completing the metallic internals, the engineer activates the startup program, beginning with copying the scanned information. After a brief calibration, Finch asks questions to the robot's head, which starts nodding in response. Then the engineer activates the voice synthesizer. Now the robot can communicate not only through gestures but also with a voice, sharing interesting facts from the database. Giraffes can go without water longer than camels, the robot said. When Finch asks the robot to share something about itself, it states that it adheres to 3 laws, referring of course to Asimov's famous laws of robotics. However, Finch's creation, like RoboCop, is endowed with a 4th rule, prioritizing the well-being of the dog in Finch's absence. The robot asks when Finch's absence will occur, but then the power goes out. The man goes to the surface, where the wind generator has malfunctioned. While repairing it, he observes a large storm on the horizon, much larger than those that occurred before. He returns to the shelter, where the robot talks to the dog, and it responds by growling and urinating on its body, not yet attached to the head. The engineer connects the robot to weather stations to receive disheartening news. The approaching storm is projected to last at least 40 days, much like the biblical global flood, and the storm will reach the shelters within a day. Finch begins to execute a plan to get as far away from the dangerous region as possible. The chosen destination is San Francisco. Somewhat motivated by emotional attachment, Finch has a collection of postcards starting with an image of the Golden Gate Bridge. There is not much time left to reach a safe place. The illness is progressing and already causing nosebleeds. The engineer attaches the robot's head to the body and teaches it to walk. It is not without falls, but the iron creation quickly catches on, though initially moving clumsily. Gathering all the supplies, making Dewey an eye from a surveillance camera, Finch loads everything into a modified mobile home, hanging a postcard with the bridge on the dashboard to mark the destination. The man embarks on his journey. The motorhome rolls along a deserted highway, dusted with sand. The robot, looking out the window, shares an interesting fact that more than 600,000 people used to live in St. Louis, but where they all went is a long story. Finch, reminiscing in passing about the times when flowers bloomed instead of a desert, notices this. Having driven to a safe distance, they take a break. Finch finishes the robot's head while it examines a collection of postcards featuring bridges from around the world. It wants to visit all these places, but the engineer dampens its enthusiasm, saying it's too far. At least we need to get to San Francisco first. Taking advantage of the stop, Finch goes on an educational outing with the robot. The first lesson is always to look for food, especially for a hungry dog. On the way, Finch explains how the whole world came to such a state. A solar flare burned the ozone layer, so living beings cannot be outdoors without a special spacesuit. While searching the building, they are caught in bad weather. The voice assistant warns of an approaching tornado. Finch tries to drive the car away, but the natural disaster is on their heels. Emergency methods have to be employed. Together with the robot, they wedge in and attach a trailer with metal cables like a tent. The tornado catches up with them. Almost all fastenings break. The car is lifted into the air and shaken, but the last cable holds. Finch changes the burst tire, using the robot as a jack. Afterward, he decides it's time to give the robot a name. It starts going through names of famous people for the engineer, rejecting one option after another. In the end, they settle on the short and straightforward variant, Jeff. Finch shakes Jeff's hand, thereby acknowledging him as an individual. Jeff tries to learn the dog's language to improve communication with Goodyear, but it just barks at him, not trusting him. Finch explains to the robot what trust is, recounting his own history. When another bout of coughing hits him, unable to continue driving, he parks in the shade and, entering a cafe, coughs up blood. Finch is forced to walk Goodyear, and since he doesn't listen to Jeff, the robot, bored in the car, accidentally starts it and drives out of the shade. Finch can't reach the van as direct sunlight will burn his skin. The protective spacesuit is left in the cabin, but Jeff manages to hand it back. The robot's irresponsible behavior leads to a quarrel. In anger, the creator reminds the mechanical being that its primary task is to care for the dog. After this incident, it becomes clear that the robot needs to be taught how to drive. At the next stop, Finch builds a campfire. They sit outside, watching the northern lights due to the destruction of the ozone layer. Now it's visible everywhere. Jeff wonders why they don't travel at night, since daytime sun is dangerous for living beings. Finch seems offended that the robot doubted his mental abilities, thinking that humans hadn't thought of it before. However, the main danger comes not from predictable natural phenomena, but from people, the tiny remnants of surviving humanity who roam looking for food. In the morning, Finch is nauseous with blood and weakened. He lies on the bed, while Jeff makes a cold compress. In the nearest town, Jeff goes on an outing to the hospital to find medicine for the creator. He takes Dewey with him. In the hospital, the robot finds a jacket, disguising itself to look like a human. Finch wakes up, puts on his spacesuit, and goes after the robots. He is extremely agitated, not without reason. Someone set a bear trap in the building. Dewey falls into it and breaks into pieces. Finding his remains, Finch deactivates the assistant. All of this turns out to be a trap set by the very few survivors. Their steps are heard in the corridor. Finch fins Jeff, and they escape. However, when they drive onto the overpass, they notice a car standing in the shadows. Mysterious pursuers catch up with them at night. Despite having a gun and bullets, Finch is scared. He instructs Jeff to turn off the headlights and veer off the road to hide behind the bridge. The low clearance prevents the van from passing without damage. The solar panel is damaged as Jeff pushes the stuck trailer. However, the mysterious pursuers lose their trail and disappear. The next morning, Jeff notices a butterfly on the windshield. The van collided with it at full speed. He wakes Finch to show him this. It turns out that the ultraviolet level in this area is not critical, and it's safe to be outdoors. For the next stop, Finch puts on a white suit with a hat to celebrate the long-forgotten feeling of stopping in the fresh air. So they play with the dog. First Finch, and then Jeff, throw the ball. Goodyear always brings the toy to the man. He doesn't trust the robot. Finch coughs up blood, staining the pristine suit, and as the engineer arrives, he asks the robot to play with the dog for whom it was created. But the tailed one leaves with the owner in the trailer. There, they lie down together on the bed. Finch pets Goodyear until his last breath. When his hand falls lifelessly, the dog begins to howl with sorrow and hopelessness. Jeff listens to the mournful howl, sitting on the street. He can't help the man in any way. The only way to appease the dead, which the robot managed to learn, is a Viking burial. That's how he sends his creator on his final journey. He places the body, wrapped in a shroud, on the funeral pyre and sets it on fire. Deprived of a peculiar parental control, he loses himself in thoughts about what to do next and asks himself, what would Finch do? The answer is simple and embedded in his program. Take care of the dog. Jeff feeds Goodyear, surprised to find that he's designed to open canned food without Finch's gentle hands. The dog has to rely on the robot, Goodyear even brings him a ball to play. The two orphaned travelers continue their journey. The dog still sleeps on the bed, preserving the scent of his owner. But the farther they go, the closer Goodyear moves to Jeff. Soon they reach that same place from the postcard. Before heading to the bridge, the robot stops on the side. The plaque in memory of Finch on the bridge, the protective mesh adorned with attached photos, messages for various people. Other survivors left messages for their relatives in this way. Jeff realizes that there are places where people are still around, and they can take care of the dog if needed. The robot decides to find them, but before embarking on the further journey, he attaches Finch's postcard to the mesh, depicting, as if drawn by a child's hand, a man in a hat, a skinny robot, and a dog.